Welcome to UMDF's Ask the Mito Doc monthly webcast. Tonight we will embark on a special format, coffee and conversation with 7 clinicians joining us in 4 breakout rooms. We have Dr. Scalia in breakout 1, Dr. Marava Kosiks and Dr. El Sharqui in room 2, Dr. Grotman and Dr. Lashman in room 3, and Dr. Ganetsky and Dr. Vernon in room 4. Each room will have our very own ambassadors moderating discussion around the themes of Mito 101 and patient rights and responsibilities. Please do not enter the rooms until we instruct you to do so. Our Ask the Mito Doc webcasts are made possible through the generosity of sponsors, so we ask that you join us in thanking the Edith Trees Charitable Trust and UCB for their ongoing support. Okay, let's get started. You can now go ahead and proceed to your desired breakout room, and if you need any help, just let Jessica know and she can help you out. Enjoy.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And if anybody joins us, then we'll just kind of fill them in when they get here. But welcome to Parents and Caregivers Breakout Room Mito 101. Today we have with us our clinicians, Dr. Ava Marava, with us here from Mayo Clinic. And we also have Dr. Evie from Mount Sinai, New York. And our ambassadors joining us today just to help us out with answering or with getting questions answered, questions started, is Linda Ramsey and Ann Corson. And I am with UMDF, and my name's Nicole Wilson. So if I haven't met any of you, it's a pleasure to meet you. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with some questions from Linda and Ann. And then if you have a question that you'd like to ask the doctors, please just raise your hand using the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. It should be somewhere down there where you can raise your hand. I unfortunately can't see it, I think, because I'm a host, but and somewhere down along the bottom, just raise your hand, I'll unmute you, and then that way you'll be able to come and ask your question to the doctors. So we'll go ahead and get started. Linda, if you'd like to ask the first question.
Sure, of course. So for our doctors, and again, just to reiterate what Nicole said, if you want to jump in and you have another question that tags off this or a comment, please don't hesitate, because this is a conversation, just getting it started. So for the doctors, when our child or loved one is diagnosed with a mitochondrial disease, we really don't know what it is. We learned that not too many people have heard of it before. And what is the first thing that every parent or caregiver should do when their loved one receives a mitochondrial diagnosis?
Wow, that's a very heavy question. Thank you, Linda. So, my experience is when you share a news like that, it is such a huge burden that it's really very difficult to listen to the doctor and remember what was discussed and what was really the advice. So usually when I say these words, I immediately first of all, I ask the parent not to come alone and have somebody in the room, a support person. It can be a husband or a wife, or it can be a good friend. I ask them sometimes to record what we discuss if they prefer to, or just make some notes that they can review at home and come back with questions. I usually immediately tell them that this has been a disease without treatment in the past. And when they start to look up things on the internet, they will get a heart attack right away. And the situation as we speak is changing so fast that it's hard to imagine that we were so desperate and without treatment a few years ago. So usually I try to engage the person, the parent, to stay with me and not fall into a horrible, anxious desperation, because then what the patient should do is not possible to summarize in one sentence, right? I think there are several very important instructions. First of all, they should choose somebody who is trained in mitochondrial disease, who will take on the child's case as an ambassador and would be always there for the complex care and be the director of that child. So there should be somebody who's responsible for the care, and the parents should think about where to find that person, the person who's giving the diagnosis, or maybe they have somebody closer to home, but there should be somebody responsible. Then there are a lot of supplements which could be started right away. And because it's so complicated, I usually use educational material, and I give these list of supplements, which are sometimes several pages long because there are different options. And I say, now take this home and we will have a follow-up appointment within a week, and we will go through one by one and see why would we use one or the other and what's feasible. I always come up with the UMDF during that first discussion, because I think knowing that there are somebody out there who might have the same disorder, it's so powerful. And many times parents learn more from another parent than what they could learn from a doctor. And usually I give also educational material actually in hand. And that's not just from UMDF, but what we developed ourselves, because I know that this first meeting is just like overwhelming. And I cannot go too deep into explaining what's causing the problem, what to expect, and how to treat in that first session. So usually I immediately take care of a follow-up appointment, which is really very close to the first appointment. So if it's possible, then it's within a week. So parents have time to think about their questions, but don't have to wait and think like, oh my God, I have 100 questions and I have to sleep 5 more nights to ask them. So I think I will ask Dr. Ibi also what other advice he has.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Morova. I think just to build on what you were saying, we as clinicians, we as mito doctors, we can't imagine what it's like to be on the receiving end of such a life-altering diagnosis, but we understand that first time we're giving you this diagnosis, your heart is racing, your mind is thinking about a million things at once. So we're always happy. Don't be afraid to ask the same questions. We're happy to talk about the same things over and over again, because we understand it's a process, and understanding the complexity of this is a process. And then, just to know as well over time that it's a mito doctor, a mito specialist, someone who's very familiar with mitochondrial disease is going to be very important for your care, but you'll also be seeing potentially a neurologist, a cardiologist, and understanding that these are just kind of to dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure we're optimizing our care, and not necessarily because we're expecting everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And then as Dr. Morova said, community, I found that a lot of patients find tremendous value in that, and there is community out there.
May I add to that question? Or add to that?
Yeah.
What resources, Dr. Ava Moreva, you said you had resources. What resources? Same thing with Dr. Evie. The reason I say that is I have an older now adult child. Times were different. I was given a piece of paper and a telephone number to call. So what other resources are available that you might give to get the parent or caregiver through that first week or two mind-numbing diagnosis?
I developed an educational slideshow for my patients and parents, and I usually go through those slides together. It's overwhelming the first time.
Mhm.
I don't do that the first time, but I do give my slides. There are a lot of pictures on the slides, and usually they just take it at the first time and they just think like whatever. But then they still go through it, and then usually the second time we meet, then we have time to go through. And then I think it's very helpful because questions come up like about inheritance, or how come it's a chromosomal gene. I thought mitochondria are, separate from. So there are questions which are coming up while parents or patients read into
Mhm.
the background. So those pictures probably are meaningless the first time, but then slowly, when we discuss specific questions, then I think we go through. They make little notes on it.
Mhm.
So that's just my experience, seeing families for so many years. And I think that that there are different educational materials, and of course, UMDF has also very good flyers, and on the internet has a lot. But I usually personalize my slides to that family depending on varies the genetic variant and what is the phenotype. I don't know, Ibi, if you want to say what, because you have also experience with several training centers with mitochondrial expertise. You trained at Colorado and at CHOP, right? So
Up in
you,
Boston, yes.
okay. So they are all mitochondrial experts. What do they use, or what kind of material you had in hand?
We use a lot of resources from the UMDF. A lot of centers develop their own kind of learning patient and caregiver resources. I recently worked on a website with Dr. Shamima Rahman in the UK. It's called About, and the Cure Mito Foundation. It's called aboutleesyndrome.org. But the internet has many different resources like that. There's not just one place, and then your mito clinician can help you identify which resources are kind of more reputable or something more appropriate for your particular situation.
So can you tell us what do you miss? Because I think you know already a lot, and what would be helpful for you?
So, Dr. Morva, were you asking me that? Were you asking me that question?
And I think, and right?
I would say, honestly, it would be a resource of, aside from the UMDF, which is a huge wealth of information, but even like hand holding and guidance, because it is so overwhelming that I believe you could just shut down. You just can't focus. And I've seen it happen with many people. Even, if you were to say, look at this page, and next week we'll go to the next step, you almost have to spoon feed. I think that's the way a lot of people, that's personally the way it had to be for me. And still does.
I can add to that as well, that the language, these are terms that a lot of us haven't heard, right, since high school, or even, before, if you didn't go to, you didn't go to school for biology. These are terms we haven't heard in a very long time, and the vocabulary is all new, and you're already anxious, right? You've received this diagnosis for your loved one. You're already anxious. And I'm so glad you brought up that suggestion, Eva Mareva, to bring an advocate or a friend or somebody else with you into that first or you never know when it's going to be the first session, but to bring somebody else with you to help remember all that language, because it is so overwhelming at first. And you did both bring up the internet, and that is something too that I know that Anne and I didn't have that resource when our children were diagnosed. And so it's just a tremendous resource of, information and support. But on the other side as well, I agree that it can be scary. If you start Googling, Dr. Google can be very scary. And because mitochondrial disease affects every person so differently, you don't want to go down that path either, to see, oh, this is what's going to happen to my child, because it does affect everybody so differently. Do you have any comments on that for newly diagnosed?
So I was at the Rare Disorders Consortium meeting this morning in Washington, D.C. So it's a consortium of 20 rare disorder centers. These are networks across the U.S. taking care of many inborn errors of metabolism, including mitochondrial disease. And somebody said, and I think that's a really important observation, that most of the disorders we discover and newly discover are showing and representing the worst end of the spectrum. And we discover them because they are debilitating, and there is an urgent need to find the cause for that disease. But that disease doesn't, or that discovery doesn't mean that your child will have the same horrible progression and outcome like in the Nature publication where the first patient was discovered. And I learned that throughout my career, that there are so many attenuated forms of horrible disorders that I always warn my parents and my patients to be very, very cautious with the literature, because if it was a mild disease, nobody had reported on it. Nobody is writing up good outcome. Everybody's presenting something new and scary in the literature. And if you just look at the presentations published on PubMed or the internet, or even just go to Facebook, you will see that the people who have really sick children, they share much more compared to the ones which have less problems. So there's always a skewing towards a bad prognosis. Anything you read, you will see the negative more. And this is actually not just a personal observation. I also listen to people working with artificial intelligence and evaluating how artificial intelligence can help us to make educational material in rare disorders. And it's shown that it's completely skewed towards the bad prognosis and towards the negative outcome, because there's much more information on the progressive disorders compared to the milder ones. So I always tell stories. I always tell honestly to my patients' parents, I have seen 2 or 20 with that particular disorder, and what my experience is from good to bad, and try to show a realistic picture and not to overwhelm them on the first visit, and maybe on the second one still going light, because then questions will come, and then it's much better to answer questions than just load them with a lot of information. EB, maybe you want to add something.
No, the one thing I just add to tell patients, just building on that and how different the same mitochondrial condition can present differently. And is something I've seen over and over, is that even when you have siblings who have the exact same genetic mutation, the same misspelling, the same condition, it can look a little different and the outcomes can be a little different. So it's important to keep that in mind, that every patient is individual, and what we see in one patient won't necessarily be what we see in another.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions that's joined us? You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have some questions. Otherwise, Anne, you can take away with another question, or Linda.
No, all right.
It looks like Katie went off mute. Mute.
Yeah, our daughter, it took us about 10 years to find her genetic result of her mitochondrial disease, which is ultra rare, as most of them are. There's her and one other person that they know about. And we're being treated at CHOP. And we had been categorized as a dystrophy for so long that I was still absorbing the fact that she had mitochondrial disease and all the metabolic and emergency care I wasn't able to cope with. So if you have good recommendations that I could go back and look at that besides my physician's notes. And I'm going to ask those questions when we see her again in the spring. But I think I'm finally at a space where I can, like if she gets ill, like what I should be doing. I just couldn't even wrap my head around that. So yeah, so that's my question.
Good question.
Okay, that's a wonderful question. So just would you mind to share with us who's the clinician who's taking care or who diagnosed your child at CHOP?
Oh, Dr. Amy Goldstein, and then it was in the NIH, Dr. Carlston Bonneman was the one who found her gene.
So I think that the recommendation does, well, I would say the recommendation can be a little different depending on which gene exactly is affected and whether it's a chromosomal gene or it's a mitochondrial gene. But actually, we are in luck because Dr. Ibi has been working for several years with the CHOP team. So I think if I remember well, there is actually emergency letter Dr. Goldstein uses for her Mito patients. Am I right, Ibi?
Absolutely. And let me say, you know, having worked with Dr. Goldstein for many years, you're in excellent hands. You know, she cares a lot and she knows a lot. And she's always open to questions and pushback and recommendations and discussions and so on. There is an emergency letter that you can ask for if it's not already there, that will be tailored to your child's specific genetic change and their specific clinical circumstances. Because you know everyone's a little different. Some people with Mito, it's not just the Mito, right? Some people have heart involvement. Some people have a different degree of brain involvement. I think you said your child specifically has a leukodystrophy. But that emergency letter will contain head to toe what to do in an emergency, who to call, in a kind of stepwise fashion. So I think that's something to ask for if it's not there already. It's something we give a lot of our patients.
Did you understand well that your child has a leukodystrophy, or it was a dystrophy?
It was they were thinking she had a muscular dystrophy, and it ended up being
okay. I apologize.
Mitochondrial. That's okay. But I think it's probably in that. I remember her talking about it, and I think I was just so flabbergasted that we finally had squared away path that I just, and she started talking about it and I just couldn't, and now I'm like going, gosh, I probably need to start focusing on what to do if she gets sick more so than I did before, because it's just really different.
Yes.
I think I'm in a space where I'm in a space where I could actually feel comfortable reading it and not feel awful reading it, as a mom. So I just need to probably go back and look at that. I just didn't know if there was something different that I should be doing.
May I add one other thing, Katie? What I have
Yeah.
found useful is both Lyndon and I have an older child, adult, is I have copies of that emergency letter on my cell phone. My daughter's in a wheelchair. It's taped to the back of her chair. It's underneath. It's all over the place because there are times that you forget it.
Right.
And I found that very, very helpful because if you are in an emergency situation, you can, I've been in an ambulance and said, here's the info. And the EMT could get it from my cell phone, which helps a great deal.
Okay. I think it's time I start absorbing that. So especially heading into the winter season and, all that stuff.
It's fair.
Yeah.
You're just ready to absorb it now. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
But Miss Katie, you do have the letter, just haven't read yet, or?
I have to go back and look for it. If not, I'll contact the clinic. They're life-saving. My daughter's quality of life is so much better already. And so grateful. It's probably there. I just was probably too overwhelmed to see that it's there. If not, I'll ask for it.
Wonderful. So when you look for that letter, then the most important things you should look for also to have a management on fluid management, like how and when to start an IV and what to put into that IV, what's recommended, how much sugar, how much other electrolytes, and then important to look for what kind of medications she can get and should avoid. And that again depends on the diagnosis, but you can have a situation like Anne just mentioned, that you're in an ambulance or you ask the ambulance to come for whatever reason. It can be a fall or something very trivial, and those people are not experts and they might just try to give a very high glucose solution or some kind of medication. So you're your child's best advocate and you will be the smartest very soon about her needs. And so I think it's really good to have that letter with you everywhere, and then just to stand up for your rights, because sometimes the doctors, they know what they want to do, but they don't know the whole story.
Right. We've already run into a bunch of situations like that, but we didn't know exactly what we were dealing with. So, yeah, I hear you.
Katie, may I ask, are you in a different, I don't need to know what state, but are you in a different state than Pennsylvania?
Yeah, we have to travel. We see our local MDA clinic, and then we travel. We've settled in on once a year because she's got so many specialists here.
Sure.
And then she's been helping us access the mitochondrial mixture has been super challenging, but I think we've maybe made some headway with the insurance after 6 months. And I'm kind of piecing together what I can on my own, but it's pretty expensive. And then we're on a trial drug, which is making a huge difference. And then she's changed her therapy, which is phenomenal. Our kiddo is getting up off the floor without pulling up on stuff. And I don't know if it's the trial drug or her therapy, but it's been amazing. So we're super grateful.
That's wonderful to hear. And your primary care is in contact with the CHOP team, so you feel like you are support.
Yes. Yeah. It's been pretty good. At first she was like, well, I don't know if we need to do that. And I'm like, oh, but this is what the NIH recommends, this is what we're doing. And since she's gotten her diagnosis, everything's been really smooth. So
the reason I asked about the state you live in is because what I've seen the CHOP team do when they're seeing patients from out of state, and what I would advocate for if I had patients from out of state, is that it can be helpful to have a local metabolism doctor where you are, and then also be followed at CHOP.
Right.
They certainly follow that model, and that way, if heaven forbid your child does get sick, you have a local metabolism team who's plugged in, who's savvy, who can navigate the local health system as well.
We live in Dallas. There's not like a metabolic specialist that I'm aware of here in Dallas that treats pediatrics.
Wow.
That I know. I know there's one in Houston, but if we're going to travel to Houston, I might as well go to CHOP.
Yeah,
That's a good 4.5 hours. So
Yes, yes.
So
Well, thank you, Katie.
you're welcome. Thank you.
That is a good segue into our next question. Does anybody else have another question? Please feel free to raise your hand, or Nicole may have unmuted you. Just jump in. But along those lines, and again, Katie, that was a great question, and I hope that was helpful regarding the team, right? The parent team or the patient's team. How to question to the doctors, how do I get my team to work together for my child? You mentioned, you have specialists here, you have specialists there, you have your Mito doctor across the country. How do I get my specialist team to work together?
So you need one director. The orchestra needs a director, and I think that most specialists, pediatricians, but some even more true for adult doctors, they're a little scared of metabolic disease. They don't see enough patients to feel comfortable. So usually they don't mind that somebody is there to ask questions from, and who's seeing the child at least once a year and gives recommendations for follow-up, for labs, for EKGs and such. I think that the person who's responsible, the conductor of the orchestra, should give very clear summary notes and share it with the patient, to really just give a copy in hand that we want these labs and these drugs and these follow-ups, and then try to have regular contact with the local team. It seems like it's very hard, but in my experience, if the orchestra conductor is how should I say, motivated enough to reach out to the local team, share email and phone numbers, and able to give feedback when it's needed, then the local team will help and will, work or play music like an orchestra. I think EBU had similar experiences.
Yes, absolutely. Having that one orchestra conductor is important. And I would also add, it shouldn't fall on you to make your team cohesive and work together. That's not your job. Is to be a parent and to be there for your kid. It's definitely on the Mito specialists to do that, and most Mito specialists do that. So that's why it's important to have that one point person identified.
Really helpful.
Yes. Do you guys think, did any of you have a bad experience with the team not communicating in case there was a conductor? Because I think that the team doesn't communicate well if nobody's taking on the responsibility for being some kind of, just spider in the web. Did you have bad experiences with chaotic support? Linda or Anne?
I was going to say, Anne or Katie, can you speak to that? Or
Well, I can speak to it, but I see Daniel nodding. Would
good.
you like to talk?
Well, we're Kaiser, Northern California, and So when after diagnosis, there was no one steering the ship but mom really. Mom steered the ship, and advocated for him and pushed for every, even pushed for the whole genome testing, which actually, helped confirm his diagnosis. So everything we've done, there's no such thing as a project there, as a leader or a case manager in that sort of insurance network, unfortunately. So we don't have we're still seeking to have someone who's like a primary investigator. We finally got a referral to see Dr. Gregory Enns in Stanford. And so we've connected with him once, which is great. And he immediately gave us an emergency letter, which you guys were talking about, which was extremely helpful when Milo was recently hospitalized, like on Halloween. And that letter was extremely helpful at that point, because we've gone to the ER in the past and they've looked at us like we have three heads because they don't know what to do. So now that they had the letter, it helped guide them and how to immediately treat him because he needed immediate treatment, IV and all of that. So we never had one. We still don't have one, but mom is the one. She's the one driving, and steering the ship because you just have to.
So
Go ahead.
can I ask Dr. Enns, did he recommend you, or did he offer you that he'll be the captain, or this was more like an expert opinion and a one-time visit?
Mom's here as well. It was more see you in 6 months follow-up, not no guiding. Yeah, he's not the captain. Still, we still have no captain except for us. Hi, Dr. El-Sharqawi. We met with Dr. Ganetsky in UMDF. And
I remember. Yes, it's a pleasure to
and
see
this
you.
is Milo again, yeah. So
And he's very, very cute.
thank you.
And he's got a
Hi,
good
Milo.
personality.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm thinking about like what would be the best way to help you guys, but I think with Kaiser, you probably would need to just get into the NAMDAC natural history study, because I'm sure that some of those centers could see you even if you're not in network. I'm not sure, Evie, do you know if CHOP is seeing patients with, because they are in the NAMDAC, right? Can they see patients even if they are not in network?
I think so, but I know Kaiser Insurance can be a little trickier. So I'm not sure, but one thing they will do is that they'll figure it out quickly if you ask them.
So I of course it's a big travel, and with him travel is hard, but we could actually see who's closest to you from the NAMDAC, because then you can be seen as a research person under the natural history study, and then you don't need your insurance, right? Because then that is supposed to be a research visit then, but you still can have your captain. So
yeah, there's a University of San Diego is a part of NAMDAC, for sure, and I'm not sure. I'll look and see what the other California ones are as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's in University of San Diego. Maybe there are good neurologists there.
Yeah, Dr. Haas.
Oh, that's
Richard
perfect.
Haas, yeah.
Yes.
He's
Oh,
there.
that would be good. So maybe that's a possibility. Did you guys consider to go to somewhere else in California?
Yeah, we would be open to going elsewhere in California. I thought, is it Richard Haas? I thought he was in Cincinnati or Ohio.
Last I heard, he was in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
yeah, he's in San Diego. It's Cincinnati, or there is a doctor that was in Cincinnati that's now up in Buffalo. But the Cleveland doctors would be Dr. Parikh or Dr. Cohen.
Oh,
Right.
that's it. It's Dr. Cohen.
Dr. Cohen,
That's what I was getting confused about because Dr. N said his neurologist counterpart is Dr. Cohen,
Yes.
and he
Yeah.
often works with.
I think Dr. Haas would be an excellent possibility, and he's also very good conductor.
Absolutely. Mhm. Absolutely.
Yes, and I'm sure that he's taking on patients without, you don't even need a referral because he has his Mito clinic, but probably a referral is helpful because, you know, the patient information gets to him easier.
Now, is when you see Dr. Enns, is it at Stanford?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Stanford's also a part of NAMDAC, so you may
Right.
be able to get into that study. So I would suggest either if Dr. Enns, if there's a nurse or anything like that that you have contact with there, or even sending it through if you guys have a portal, you know, like your electronic health records, anything like that. You can ask to be included into NAMDAC's patient registry.
Okay. That's a good idea.
So it won't be any burden on you because it's just a natural history study. So they are only offering clinical care and just collect clinical data for us clinicians to learn from it. But because it's a study, you don't have to be in network in order to see someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a NIH study, but it wasn't natural history this summer.
It was the mini
the metabolism and immunization.
immunology with Dr. McGuire.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's excellent too.
Yes, it was a great visit. I wish the NIH was closer, or it was more than metabolism and immunology, but
yes, and I think that you can also specifically ask your doctors, would you be my captain, please? Because sometimes it's not clear if there is a captain already. So just try to see who's closest, who's the best match with your needs, and then ask them to take on this responsibility. And it can be only once a year, you know, but just being able to reach out to someone with questions and feel like, okay, during the year, if anything happens, he's available for your other providers or for you to solve maybe little problems, but just keep contact and see the big picture.
yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Well, I see that you're really busy with the evening. Is he going to bed now?
He's just choking a lot on his saliva. And my husband is picking up my daughter from an after school activity, but no, I didn't even know he was doing it. We were just going to get equipment modifications and I just got back home. I'm glad my husband joined this meeting.
It was lovely meeting you guys.
Yes, nice meeting
Really
you.
nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you. Where are you at CHOP still?
No, I'm at Mount Sinai, New York now.
Okay. No, too bad you aren't here in Stanford.
I wish I could be.
Yeah.
Don't steal him.
Well, that was good questions. Thank you. I'm glad you joined. We have the opportunity probably for one last question if anybody has.
I think where I'm kind of at is, you know, we've been kind of on the diagnostic odyssey for 11, almost 12 years, and finally squared away. And we have so many specialists, and just like trying to figure out, like, my daughter's definitely tolerates more than she used to, but like I'm like, we have so many doctors and I have 2 special needs kids on top of it, so trying to coordinate all the visits and trying to figure out how to cluster them and to where I'm not like constantly at the hospital. And you know, I wish there was a resource that could like book all of our appointments. Does anybody have anything that does that to where you're clustering some of your appointments to where you're not there all the time? I feel like I live at the hospital.
That varies from hospital to hospital, but I
Mhm.
would ask you that's a very reasonable request, and that's one we get a lot, and that's something we can. It's not always possible because different clinicians, different specialties have different schedules and logistics, but there should be a point person, a social worker, a complex care pediatrics provider, the Mito doctor and their team, who should be able to coordinate all these appointments, because we should be able to make it as easy as possible for you so that you're not always coming in and out.
So, all
We,
right, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say at Mayo Clinic, there is a clinic called Compass, and the Compass Clinic, there is a pediatrician who's really giving orders to the schedulers what kind of appointments can or have to happen and how frequently. And it's the task of the scheduler to coordinate all the appointments. So at Mayo, this is like a given. But probably if you have a good academic center and you specifically request to combine the appointments, you just once have to get into the rhythm, right? And then try to combine them. And then maybe eye doctor, you will only see a little longer, like maybe you don't see every year because you break up that schedule, but
Right.
I think you should request it, and it has to be possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna start working on that because I'm getting a little burnout.
I'm
that's
sorry.
understood.
Don't be afraid to ask, because it is a very reasonable request, and one that we get a lot. So I would advocate for you asking for it for that.
Thank you. Good to know I'm not alone.
No, and I know CHOP does it because we do that.
They do, and it's
and
amazing. I would give my right arm to have that closer to home.
CHOP does have that, and in my case, my daughter is in between. She's also treated as an adult now, so they help in coordinating between some of the pen side and some of the other side of things if we make it a big visit, or communicate with her other physicians locally here, so that it does help. But it takes a bit of effort to get everything into a rhythm. But don't be afraid to ask. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I think that we are going to get bumped out of our room and into the main room. So we'll see you all back there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your stories, and hope to see you in the future.
So I really want to thank everyone. I don't know how everyone felt about your rooms. We really want to hear your feedback. But I know there was a lot of questions, and I know we couldn't get to everything, but it seemed like a very engaged group in group number 1. So I don't know how everyone else did in your breakout rooms. I do want to let you know that we will have a resource document that our ambassadors worked really hard on to pull together some resources that we will share with everyone along with the recordings. So I just wanted you to know that will be coming. It may take us a little while to get the recordings for each breakout room together, but we will be posting those on our Mito U. I really want to thank the doctors and the clinicians for being on tonight. I hope you found it interesting and engaging and not too overwhelming for this late at night. And also the ambassadors for helping us. This was actually this coffee and conversation breakout rooms was the idea of our ambassadors and Margaret Moore. And I think it was a really great opportunity to do something different for us, the Mito Doc. Maybe we'll do this once a year. We'll see how we've learned a lot. There was a lot of things we learned along the way here that we will remember and put into play. But I would really appreciate any feedback. Make sure you email us, and let us know if you have suggestions. And that's to the clinicians as well. If you feel like there'd be something that would work better for you, please let us know how you felt about the webcast tonight. So with that being said, I just want to thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you all again next month. I believe it is December. I could share the screen, and it will be a wrap up with our 2023 with our Mito doc. But yes, we will have 4 or 5 Mito docs on in December, and we look forward to seeing you all back then. Thank you, and have a